Ever feel like you've played every RPG out there? Trust me, you haven't. Today, I'm sharing 10 RPGs that are so underrated, you won't believe you've never heard of them. Let's dive into these hidden treasures that are about to blow your mind. Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning. Man, this one's interesting because it had a bit of a troubled history, right? The original came out back in 2012 and it felt like this massive, sprawling fantasy world with a really cool combat system, like you could seamlessly switch between melee and magic, and the fate shift finishers were just so satisfying. But for some reason, the original didn't quite blow up as much as it probably should have. Maybe it was the timing coming out around Skyrim and all that. Fast forward to today and we get this Re-Reckoning version. For someone who missed it the first time around, this is a fantastic entry point. The world of Amalur is genuinely interesting, with a deep history and tons of lore to dive into if you're into that, and the combat still feels great. It's more action-oriented than some other big RPGs, which can be a nice change of pace. You're not just standing there trading blows, you're dodging, weaving, and unleashing flashy combos. The story itself is pretty classic fantasy stuff. You're the Fateless One, brought back from the dead and able to change the destiny of the world. It's a solid narrative that keeps you engaged, even if it doesn't reinvent the wheel. Honestly, if you're looking for a big, meaty, single-player RPG with a focus on fun, fluid combat and a world packed with quests and secrets, Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning is definitely one of those that might have flown under your radar, but is absolutely worth checking out now. It's like finding a really good fantasy novel you never knew existed. Greedfall. Okay, Greedfall. This one's an interesting beast. It came out from Spiders, a studio that's known for making these really ambitious kind of AA RPGs. They don't always have the massive budgets of the big AAA studios, but they usually have some really cool ideas. With Greedfall, the big hook was the setting. It's this sort of 17th century colonial fantasy vibe with flintlock pistols and fancy coats mixed with magic and mythical creatures. You play as D. Sardet, who's heading to this newly discovered island of Tir Fradi. The old world is plagued by this nasty disease and everyone's hoping the island holds a cure. But of course, it's not that simple. The island is already inhabited by these native people who have their own connection to the land and its magic. On top of that, you've got different factions from the old world, the Pious Theleme, the scientifically minded Bridge Alliance, all trying to get a piece of the pie. So right away, you're thrown into this melting pot of cultures, politics, and ancient secrets.
I'm here. Pull yourself together.
The gameplay in Greedfall is pretty classic RPG stuff. You've got quests, dialogue choices that actually matter, which is always a plus, and a decent amount of character customization. You can build your character in a few different ways, focusing on combat, magic, or more diplomatic skills. You also get a party of companions who have their own backstories and allegiances, and your relationships with them can really impact the story. Where Greedfall really shines, I think, is in its world building and the choices it presents. You're constantly having to navigate these complex relationships between the different factions and the natives. There are rarely clear-cut good or bad guys, and your decisions can have significant consequences on how the story unfolds and who ends up on top. It definitely gives you that feeling of your actions having weight. Now, it's not a perfect game. Being a smaller studio, there are definitely some rough edges. You might notice some less than stellar animations or some repetitive environments here and there, but if you can look past that, Greedfall offers a really engaging story, a unique setting, and a lot of classic RPG goodness that might have been overlooked by some. It's one of those games that proves you don't need a massive budget to create a compelling and immersive experience. Definitely worth a look if you're into story-driven RPGs with meaningful choices. Dragon's Dogma, Dark Arisen. Dragon's Dogma, Dark Arisen. Man, this game is just weird in the best possible way. It's like Capcom took a bunch of cool RPG ideas, threw them in a blender, and somehow it all came out tasting amazing, even if it's a bit unique. The big thing that sets Dragon's Dogma apart is the pawn system. You create your own main companion, the Arisen's loyal sidekick, and then you can hire 2 other pawns created by other players online. It's not quite multiplayer in the traditional sense, but it creates this really interesting dynamic. Your pawn learns from your adventures, picking up enemy weaknesses and quest knowledge, and then they can share that with other players when they get hired. It's like this constantly evolving database of shared experience, plus their quirky AI and sometimes hilariously unhelpful advice just adds to the charm. Wolves hunt in packs! You'll hear that about a million times. Then there's the combat. It's action-focused and incredibly satisfying. You can climb onto massive monsters, cyclopses, griffins, dragons, and attack their weak points. It feels epic in a way that a lot of other RPGs don't quite capture. There's a real sense of scale when you're clinging to the back of a roaring chimera as it tries to shake you off. And the different character classes called vocations offer a ton of variety in how you approach combat. From being a nimble strider to a powerful sorcerer, the story itself is, well, it's there. You're the Arisen and your heart gets yoinked out by a dragon and you gotta go get it back. It's a classic hero's journey setup. But the world of Grancis is really atmospheric and full of interesting locations and creatures. The Dark Arisen part is an expansion that adds Bitter Black Isle, which is this incredibly challenging and rewarding endgame area with some seriously tough enemies and powerful loot. It's almost like a dungeon crawler within the main gate. Wasteland 3. Now we're talking about some serious post-apocalyptic RPG goodness. This is the kind of game that throws you into the thick of it and doesn't pull any punches. It's the direct sequel to Wasteland 2. But even if you haven't played that one, you can jump right in and get a handle on things pretty quickly. The setting is Colorado, but not the sunny ski resorts you might be thinking of. It's a frozen wasteland ravaged by nuclear war and filled with all sorts of desperate and dangerous factions. You start as a member of the Desert Rangers from Arizona who get called in to help a self-proclaimed patriarch of Colorado in exchange for much-needed supplies. Of course, things go sideways pretty fast, and you end up having to forge your own path and make some incredibly tough decisions that will shape the fate of the entire region. The gameplay is a blend of squad-based tactical combat and deep RPG mechanics. The combat is turn-based, and it's all about positioning your rangers, utilizing their different skills and weapons effectively, and taking cover. It can be brutal, and you'll need to think strategically to survive some of the tougher encounters. And outside of combat, you'll be exploring the frozen wastes, scavenging for resources, talking to all sorts of quirky and often morally ambiguous characters, and completing quests. Character customization is another big draw. You start by creating your initial squad of rangers and you can really fine-tune their stats, skills, and perks to fit your playstyle. As you progress, you'll recruit more companions, each with their own backstories and personalities, and you'll need to manage their development and equipment as well. Building the right team for the challenges ahead is crucial. If you're a fan of classic isometric RPGs with a focus on tactical combat, deep character development, and meaningful choices, and you don't mind a bleak but fascinating setting, then Wasteland 3 is definitely one of those hidden gems that you absolutely need to check out. It's a challenging but incredibly rewarding experience. Scarlet Nexus. Now, the core concept of Scarlet Nexus revolves around psionic powers. In this world, some people are born with these incredible mental abilities, like telekinesis, pyrokinesis, or even the ability to manipulate time. You actually get to play as two different protagonists with their own unique powers and perspectives on the story. The combat in this game is where it really shines. It's fast-paced, flashy, and incredibly satisfying. You're not just hitting buttons, you're using your psychic abilities to lift cars, hurl debris, and chain together these awesome combos. What's really cool is the SAS system, which lets you temporarily borrow the powers of your teammates. So you might combine your telekinesis with your buddy's pyrokinesis to create a flaming tornado, or use another character's teleportation to zip around the battlefield. It adds a lot of depth and strategic possibilities to the fights. The story in Scarlet Nexus is pretty engaging too, with a lot of mysteries surrounding the others and the origins of these psionic powers. Because you play as two different characters, you get to see events unfold from different angles, and there are some pretty significant plot twists and reveals along the way. It's the kind of narrative that keeps you guessing and wanting to see what happens next. Now, while the combat is definitely the main draw, Scarlet Nexus also has a decent amount of RPG elements. You level up your characters, learn new skills, and upgrade your equipment. There's also a bonding system where you can deepen your relationships with your teammates through dialogue choices and spending time with them, which in turn unlocks new abilities and story moments. It adds a nice layer of character development outside of just combat. Tyranny. This one's a bit of a mindbender because it flips the typical fantasy RPG trope right on its head. Instead of playing the heroic underdog fighting against evil, in Tyranny, the bad guys have already won. Like, the overlord Kairos has conquered the land, and you're one of their fate binders. Essentially a high-ranking official tasked with enforcing their law and order. Right from the start, you're in a position of power, but that doesn't mean things are simple. Kairos' rule, while absolute, isn't necessarily unified. You've got different factions within the Overlord's army, each with their own agendas and ways of doing things. You'll be constantly navigating these political tensions, trying to maintain order while also dealing with rebellions and the remnants of the old world. What makes Tyranny so interesting is the moral ambiguity. There are very few good choices. Often you're picking between different shades of bad or trying to find the least terrible option. Your decisions have real weight and can drastically alter the story, your relationships with different factions and companions, and even the very landscape of the tiers, the game's setting. It's the kind of RPG where you can genuinely feel the impact of your choices.
During my time as a chorus prisoner, I heard...
The gameplay is classic isometric RPG fare, similar to games like Pillars of Eternity, which makes sense since it's also from Obsidian Entertainment. You control a party of characters, engage in real-time with pause combat, and explore detailed environments filled with quests, lore, and interesting characters. The combat system is tactical, allowing you to utilize your party members' unique skills and spells to overcome challenges. The companions in Tyranny are also really well written and complex. They have their own motivations and allegiances, and your interactions with them can significantly impact their personal stories and their loyalty to you. You'll need to carefully consider their perspectives when making decisions, as they might agree or disagree with your choices, potentially leading to conflict or stronger bonds.
As the final conquest draws near,
You lie, cheat, and steal, twisting everything around you for your bottomless ambition.
Lost Odyssey. Now we're diving into some classic JRPG feels right here. This game came out during the Xbox 360 era, and it was definitely Microsoft's big swing at delivering that epic, story-driven Japanese role-playing experience that so many people love. And honestly, it hit a lot of the right notes. What immediately stands out about Lost Odyssey is its incredibly poignant and emotionally resonant story. You play as Kame Argonar, an immortal man who has lived for over 1,000 years but has lost all his memories. As the game progresses, fragments of his past come back to him in the form of these beautifully written short stories called 1,000 Years of Dream. These aren't just little snippets, they're often these deeply moving tales about loss, love, regret, and the weight of immortality. They're presented almost like interactive prose, and they add a layer of emotional depth that's pretty unique in gaming. Seriously, some of these stories will stick with you. Beyond the narrative, Lost Odyssey features a traditional turn-based combat system with some interesting twists. One of the key mechanics is the aim bonus, where timing your button presses right as you attack can significantly increase your damage. It adds a little bit of active engagement to the turn-based formula. You also have different classes and skills to learn as your party members level up, allowing for strategic team building. Now, Lost Odyssey isn't without its old-school JRPG quirks. Random encounters can sometimes feel a bit frequent, and the pacing might feel a little slower compared to more modern RPGs, but if you appreciate a game that prioritizes a strong, character-driven story with a focus on emotional themes, and you enjoy a solid turn-based combat system, then Lost Odyssey is definitely a hidden gem that might have flown under your radar, especially if you weren't primarily a JRPG player during that console generation. It's a game that truly tries to tell a mature and heartfelt story, and it largely succeeds. Resonance of Fate. Can you imagine you're walking into a store that sells video games, right? and you see this cover art that's just different. Everyone's wearing these fancy old-timey clothes, but they're holding these crazy looking guns, and the background is all these giant metal gears and pipes going up forever. That's kind of the vibe of this game. It's got this really unique style that you don't see every day. You're following these three characters: Vacheron, who's kind of the cool, experienced one; Zephyr, who's maybe a bit more rough around the edges; and Leanne, who's often the more thoughtful one. They're basically mercenaries, which means they take on jobs for money, but as they go around this giant tower world called Basel, they start to uncover some really weird stuff about how the whole world works and who's really in charge. The story can be a bit like a puzzle at times, where you're slowly putting the pieces together, but it's definitely got its own strange and interesting story to tell. Now, the fighting in this game is where it gets really interesting and kind of unusual. It's turn-based, so you take your time to decide what to do, but it feels much more active than just picking attacks from a menu. But you move your characters around the battlefield in straight lines, and if you can connect the beginning and end of your movement with an attack, you do this special try-attack that can really mess up the bad guy. It's like you're choreographing these gunfights. You also have to manage this energy thing called bezels, because if you run out, you can get into trouble. It's all about moving your guys into the right spots and timing your attacks just right. It can take a little while to click, but once it does, it's a really satisfying way to fight. Even getting around the world map is a bit different. It's like a big grid, and you have to use these special hexagon-shaped energy pieces to unlock new paths and areas to explore. It's another one of those unique touches that makes the game stand out. The Outward. In Outward, you're not some chosen hero with incredible powers right from the start. You're just a regular person trying to make your way in a pretty harsh fantasy world called Ori. You have to worry about basic needs like hunger, thirst, sleep, and even the temperature. If you're exploring a cold region without the right gear, you can freeze. If you don't eat or drink, you'll get weak. It adds this layer of realism and challenge that you don't often see in other big RPG games. The game also emphasizes exploration and discovery. The world is pretty big and interconnected, with different regions that have their own unique environments, creatures, and cultures. There's a real sense of venturing out into the unknown, and you often have to rely on your wits and preparation to survive. There's no fast travel in the traditional sense either, which makes the journeys feel more significant. You really get to know the world by traveling through it on foot. Combat in Outward is deliberate and can be quite challenging. It's not about flashy combos as much as it is about positioning, timing your attacks, and using the right equipment. Even basic enemies can be dangerous if you're not prepared. You'll need to learn their attack patterns and use dodges and blocks effectively. Magic exists in the game, but it often requires specific preparations, like learning rituals or using special items, which fits with the game's emphasis on planning. Another interesting aspect of Outward is its approach to death. When you get defeated, you don't necessarily just reload a save. Instead, you might wake up captured by enemies, rescued by a stranger, or find yourself in a completely different location. It adds to the sense of a persistent world where things happen even when you fail. Banishers, Ghost of New Eden. Basically, you play as this dude Red, who's a ghost hunter, and his girlfriend Antia, who used to be a ghost hunter, but now she's a ghost herself. They go to this creepy place called New Eden because there's some really nasty ghost problem, but things go sideways, and Antia ends up becoming one of the ghosts they hunt. Talk about a messed up situation, right? So the game is all about these two trying to figure things out. You run around as Red, fighting ghosts and monsters with swords and guns, but Antia's a ghost, so she can do all this cool, spooky stuff in fights too. You can even switch between playing as Red and sometimes using Antia's ghost powers during battles. It's pretty neat. But the main thing is, everywhere you go in this creepy New Eden, there are ghosts haunting people. You gotta figure out what happened to them and then make a choice. Do you help them move on to the afterlife, banish them, or do you try to let their spirit stick around somehow, ascend them? And the choices you make really change the story and how things end up for Red and Taya, and for the people living in New Eden. It's not always a clear good or bad choice, which is pretty cool. Since it's from the Life is Strange people, you know the story, and the characters are gonna be a big deal. Red and Antia's relationship is really at the center of it all, dealing with this crazy situation of one of them being a ghost. It's like a love story with ghost hunting mixed in, which is kind of a unique thing. Vampyr. This one's got a cool dark vibe going on. It throws you into London during the Spanish flu epidemic around 1918, and you play as Dr. Jonathan Reed. Now here's the twist, he's also just become a vampire. So you're this respected doctor trying to save lives during a terrible plague, but you've also got this uncontrollable thirst for blood. The game really leans into this duality. You're constantly torn between your Hippocratic oath as a doctor and your newfound predatory nature as a vampire. You'll be investigating the source of the flu, dealing with the shadowy secrets of London's underbelly, and trying to control your urges. So one of the central mechanics of Vampyr is the feeding system. You can choose to prey on the citizens of London to grow stronger and unlock new vampiric abilities. Each district in the city has its own set of residents, each with their own lives, relationships, and secrets. If you decide to feed on someone, it'll impact that district, their absence will be felt, and it can have ripple effects on the overall stability and well-being of the area. Some characters might offer valuable information or services, so deciding whether to drain them for power or keep them alive for their usefulness creates some really tough moral choices. The combat in Vampyr is a mix of melee attacks using makeshift weapons in your claws and supernatural vampire abilities like blood spears and shadow dashes. It's not the smoothest combat out there, and it can be a bit clunky at times, but it gets the job done. The challenge often comes from facing groups of enemies, including other vampires, vampire hunters, and infected humans. Pentiment. Man, this game is different, like really different from most RPGs out there. It's from Obsidian Entertainment, the same folks who did Fallout New Vegas and Pillars of Eternity, but this is a total change of pace. Instead of epic fantasy or sci-fi, Pentiment throws you way back in time to 16th century Bavaria. You play as Andreas Mahler, a talented artist working in a scriptorium at a monastery. Scriptoriums were basically workshops where they hand-copied books before printing was widespread, so right off the bat, you know this isn't your typical sword and sorcery setup. The game unfolds like a historical mystery. A murder happens in the community and Andreas gets caught up in trying to solve it. But it's not just about finding a killer. The game spans over 25 years, and your choices and the way you investigate the initial crime have long-lasting consequences on the town, the people in it, and even the history of the region. What's super unique about Pentiment is its art style. It looks like a medieval manuscript come to life, with hand-drawn characters and environments that are just gorgeous and really evoke the period. Even the text appears on the screen in a way that mimics old handwriting. It's visually stunning and unlike anything else out there. The gameplay is very narrative-focused. You'll be spending a lot of time talking to people, investigating clues, and making dialogue choices that influence the story and your relationships with the other characters. There's no real combat or traditional RPG leveling system. Your progression comes from the knowledge you gain and the impact your decisions have on the community. Pentiment is all about immersing you in this historical setting and letting you unravel its mysteries. You'll learn about the daily lives of people in the 16th century, the religious and political tensions of the time, and the slow march of history. It's a game that really makes you think and consider the consequences of your actions over a long period. Pathologic 2. Pathologic 2 is one of the weirdest and most stressful RPGs you'll ever play, but in a good way, kinda. It's not like normal games where you're a hero saving the world with cool weapons and big speeches. This one throws you into a dying, creepy town, gives you almost nothing, and says, good luck. You play as a doctor who just got back to his hometown. The place is falling apart, there's a deadly disease spreading, people don't trust you, and you have no idea what's going on. You've got 12 days to figure things out before the whole town possibly collapses. Every day, things get worse, and you can't save save everyone. Actually, you probably won't save most people. The game's not about winning, it's about surviving, making tough choices, and just trying your best. You'll be hungry all the time, running low on medicine, and constantly questioning if you made the right call. It feels more like real life during a crisis, messy, unfair, and kind of heartbreaking. Story-wise, it's deep and super weird in a cool way. Characters talk like they're in a play, and there's a lot of strange, dreamlike stuff going on. There are creepy theater people, rituals, and tons of mysteries that don't have clear answers. It's one of those games that really gets under your skin and makes you feel stuff, even if you don't always understand it all. Pathologic 2 is not an easy game. It's stressful, emotional, and it expects a lot from you. If you're into chill, cinematic games where you can just relax and enjoy the ride, this ain't it. But if you want something super different that'll stick with you long after you finish it, it's a wild experience you won't forget.
Make haste, son. I truly need you.
The World Ends With You. The World Ends With You is one of the coolest and most stylish RPGs out there. It originally came out on the Nintendo DS, but you can find newer versions now too. The whole game takes place in modern-day Shibuya, a busy neighborhood in Tokyo full of fashion, music, and weird vibes. You play as a teenage guy named Neku, who wakes up in the middle of the city with no clue how he got there. Pretty quickly you find out you're stuck in this thing called the Reaper's Game. Basically, you're dead, or close to it, and you've got to win this 7-day challenge or you'll be erased for good. No pressure, right? The story is deep, mysterious, and honestly, kind of emotional. It starts out with Neku being cold and closed off, he doesn't trust anyone, but as you go through the game, he meets other players, starts to open up, and you see some real character growth. It's a game about trust, connection, and figuring out who you are. Now, the combat system, super unique. On the DS, you had to control 2 characters at once, one on the top screen, one on the bottom. It was kind of chaotic, but fun once you got it. In later versions, it's more simplified, but it still has that fast-paced, touch-based, almost rhythm-like style. You equip pins to use special abilities, and each pin gives you cool moves like fire blasts, dashes, or telekinesis. It's flashy, fast, and super fun. And let's talk style. This game drips with it. The music, absolute bangers. The art, sharp, bold, and very anime but with an edge. The clothes and items all tie into this whole Shibuya fashion vibe. It doesn't feel like any other RPG. It feels like it belongs on a streetwear magazine cover. Honestly, The World Ends With You is one of those games that just hits different. It's weird in a good way, emotional, stylish, and full of surprises. If you like RPGs that aren't just swords and dragons, and you're cool with something fast, fresh, and a little wild, this one's definitely worth checking out. Yume Nikki. Yume Nikki is kind of hard to explain. It's not like a normal RPG. There's no combat, no dialogue, no real story handed to you. It's more like a dream you walk through, quiet, weird, sometimes peaceful, sometimes creepy. The name literally means dream diary in Japanese, and that's pretty much what it is. You play as a girl named Madatsuki, and all you can really do is walk around her tiny room and go to sleep. But once you're asleep, you enter these strange dream worlds. Some are pretty, some are disturbing, and none of them really tell you what's going on. There are no quests or missions, you just explore. Well, each dream is totally different. You might be walking through a neon city, an endless hallway, or a desert full of strange people with no faces. Sometimes it's peaceful, sometimes it's super unsettling. The whole thing gives off this quiet, lonely, dreamlike energy that really sticks with you. A goal technically is to collect these things called effects, weird powers, or items that change how you look or move, like turning into a frog, getting a bike so you can move faster, or even turning into something kind of creepy. But there's no boss fight or final level, you just explore until you've seen it all, or until you feel like you're done. What makes Yume Nikki special is how personal and strange it feels. It's all about mood. No hand-holding, no clear answers, just you wandering through someone's subconscious. Some people think the game is about depression or trauma, but nothing is ever said out loud. It's all in how the world feels. It was made in RPG Maker by one person and dropped online for free, but it ended up becoming a cult classic. Tons of fan theories, remakes, and even some spin-offs came out of it. If you like games that tell you everything, this isn't it. But if you're into exploring weird emotional spaces with zero pressure, and you're okay with being confused for a while, it's kind of a fascinating experience. Lisa the Painful. Alright, so Lisa the Painful is not your average RPG. It's weird, dark, funny, super emotional, and honestly kinda messed up. But that's what makes it so good. It's one of those games that'll make you laugh out loud 1 minute and then hit you in the gut the next. You play as a bald, middle-aged guy named Brad. The world is totally broken, some kind of event wiped out all the women, so society has gone full Mad Max. Brad finds a baby girl, somehow the only girl left alive, and decides to raise her in secret. Years later, she gets taken, and Brad goes on a brutal journey to get her back. But here's the thing, this game is painful for a reason. Brad has a dark past and he's not really a hero. He's done messed up stuff. You'll see flashbacks of his childhood trauma, and as the story goes on, you'll start asking yourself if you're really doing the right thing. It's heavy. Gameplay-wise, it's an old-school turn-based RPG, kind of like Earthbound, but way more twisted. You find all these weird and funny characters to join your team, like a guy who only fights by dancing, or a dude in a luchador mask. The cast is wild, but lovable in a broken kind of way. But the game doesn't go easy on you. People in your party can die permanently. There are moments where you have to make awful choices, like lose an arm or watch your friend die. The game is always asking, how far will you go for someone you love, and it makes you feel those choices. Also, Brad gets addicted to a drug called Joy, which helps in combat but messes with your body and mind, so even leveling up feels like a moral decision. Everything has a price. Visually, the game's simple, pixel art style, but it does so much with it. The music is weird and catchy, and the world is full of strange, broken people. It's sad, but also really funny in a dark, awkward way. Like, you'll laugh, then feel bad about laughing. In the end, Lisa the Painful is about trauma, addiction, love, guilt, and how far someone will go to fix something that might already be broken. It's rough, it's weird, and it'll stick with you long after it's over. Jade Empire. Jade Empire is an old-school action RPG made by BioWare, the same team that made Mass Effect and Dragon Age, but instead of being in space or a medieval fantasy world, this game is set in a magical version of ancient China. It's full of kung fu, spirits, and deep choices. You play as a student at a martial arts school. Life is peaceful at first, but of course things go wrong. Your master gets taken, the Empire's hiding secrets, and you find out you're connected to something way bigger than you thought. So you go on this journey to figure out the truth and save the world, or take it over if that's your style. The coolest thing is how the game lets you choose what kind of person you want to be. You can be kind and peaceful, or more selfish and ruthless. People treat you differently based on your choices, and the story changes depending on what you do. It's got that classic your choices matter thing that BioWare is famous for.
You will have your chance to fight soon enough.
The fighting feels kind of like a kung fu movie. You can switch between different fighting styles in real time. Some are fast, some are strong, some use magic or even turn you into a demon. It's fun and pretty simple once you get the hang of it. The world feels unique too. It's not another medieval castle game. It's full of Chinese-style buildings, flying spirits, ghost stories, and deep ideas about life and balance. The vibe is really calm in some parts, then intense in others. It's a little old now, came out in 2005, which is like 20 freaking years, so the graphics and controls are kinda dated, but the story, the characters, and the whole feel of the game still hold up. If you like story-heavy RPGs that feel a little different from the usual stuff, Jade Empire is worth a shot.